Hey, everybody. And today we're going to talk about karmic astrology. And we're here with one and only Laura Nalbandian. And by the way, did I pronounce your last name
You
correctly?
did. You probably pronounced it more accurately than an American would. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this with you. Thanks.
Laura is not only that, she is an amazing second generation astrologer. She's a coordinator of big conferences. She is a powerhouse in astrology world, and she is a worldwide speaker. Her focus in using the Pluto method of evolutionary astrology. If you want to know more about Laura, you can visit her website, lauranalbandian.com. I'm going to post it underneath of the video. She is the head coordinator of United Astrology Conference. First, I want to ask you about the conference itself and then about your wonderful two lectures that you're presenting on Saturday and on Sunday. One of them is karmic astrology, planets and aspects to the lunar nodes, and another one is beginner astrology, Mars, the path to actualizing our personal power. So, Laura, tell me a little bit about UAC.
Personally, for me, I've been to every UAC except 1989. I went to the very first one in San Diego in 1986. My mother, Margaret Nalbandian, lectured, and I remember going with her. And then starting in 95 in Monterey, California, our bookstore, Astrology became the bookstore. So I've had a long history, obviously, of interaction with UAC. UAC is the United Astrology Conference, is the brainchild of some astrologers back in early 80s and mid 80s to bring the major organizations, ESAR, NCGR, and AFAN together to collectively put together a conference. And the point was to treat the speakers across the board equally. So there would be no headliners who would make more or have more time in the sun or the light than any other astrologer. It was meant to be done egalitarianly, and I think that, I'm not even sure they knew how it was going to come out, because in 1986, it was so big they had to put tents up out in the parking lot for to make bigger spaces for some of the classes. It was huge. They had to take on other hotels for rooms. It was just right out of the gate. People were hungry for having this kind of venture, bringing these organizations together. Now, each of these, particularly ESAR and NCGR, have their own conferences, but this was something collectively to come together and work on. And so UAC 2018, so we've got 86, 89, 92, 95, 98, 2002, 2008, and 2012. So that's 8. This will be the 9th UAC.
Wow.
And so it is most conferences are kind of like a sprint to a medium range race. You've got 2-3 days to throw yourself into a conference. UAC's a marathon. It's a marathon. It's a spectacle. It's an event. It's a happening. It's something to come and experience. It's not just about learning from world-class astrologers, which of course you can do, right? I mean, everybody under the sun is going to be there. And so you can learn from astrologers that you've only hoped to read their books. You'll see them in person, be able to get them to sign your books, and you'll get autographs. But it is a place to meet astrologers from around the world, to make relationships and establish relationships that you couldn't possibly have established and made without coming to an event. And this is the beauty of conferences. I am passionate, if you can't tell. I'm passionate about conferences because it is, though you can talk to your friends online and you can have these chats and you can do internet broadcasting and, webinars and all that kind of thing which are valuable, no question, they're valuable, but the true bonus value to a conference is that you're in person. You get to be up front, in person, seeing these speakers and connecting and making relationships. For me, everything is about connection. People learn better when they're connected, when they feel like they're not only connected to the speaker, they're connected to the people around them, because they can walk out of that lecture and go, oh my God, did you hear what she said? What do you think about that? Did you go see so-and-so? And what did you think about that book? And they get to chew on ideas and share ideas and make these connections. And when people, again, feel connected in an ever isolated world, people learn more. They will remember the experience. It will be embedded more deeply because they had an emotional response, an emotional connection to the process.
I love that. And just from my own physics perspective, when people get together in the same room and, like you said, emotionally connected, there's a massive resonance going on there. And when the massive resonance is going on, it stays embedded in the memory, so they learn better. It's just
absolutely
just like with group meditations, the same thing. There is a lot more impact and result when people get into groups, into one space.
But it's also this kind of spectacle. It is a happening kind of thing. It is all the energy that's happening, the vibration, the interaction, the personalities, all of that come together in such a unique cocktail, a unique mix. You can't replicate that by distance learning. And that's why distance learning has to be coupled with in-person meetings so that people can make those kinds of connections. And we know that memory is strengthened when it is combined with emotionality. So when you talk about the moon and memory, those are two very important things, because we're connected in the emotional body. It embeds itself in the emotional body instead of just embedding itself in the mental space, which can only hold so much. And we make room and we clear that stuff out and we make room for new information. So when we connect it to the emotion, it's held in that space, in our emotional memory banks for a lot longer. So, and our learning, as I said, is deepened when we're engaged. And when speakers are engaged, presenters are engaged with not only their audience, but when they step out and engage with the larger group. You know, it used to be in the old days that, and I'm talking way back, speakers would come to a conference and then they'd sort of isolate themselves away from the rest of the conference, because it can be draining, you know, for an astrologer to constantly be bombarded. What do you think about this? Having charts shoved in their face and that sort of thing. And it can be exhausting. And so astrologers need to know how to, attendees know how to respect space, and astrologers and presenters need to know how to set clear boundaries energetically so that's not overrun. So having speakers involved is important. And at my own personal conference, we do that. And I'm going to encourage, you know, the speakers to really be as engaged as much as possible, because we collectively, energy to me is everything, whether that's intellectual energy, emotional energy, physical energy, spiritual energy, whatever. It's all energy, right? And so when we, whether it's us on the planning committee, the UAC board, and the speakers together collectively hold space energetically for this conference, it becomes this amazing, again, this amazing container, an intentional container, not just a sort of haphazard container or not even a good container, one where energy leaks out. But when you have that containment, it creates an intentional supportive field for everyone in that space. People, whether they know it or not, are being energetically held in that space, which provides a sense of nurturing, safety, intention, connection, that somebody actually cares that you're there, which in those big environments can feel like it doesn't matter whether you're there. And I want it to be that every person walks away feeling like they were meant to be there. They were part of what occurred, not just a bystander.
That's what we're trying to do. We're all working hard to create that sense of connection of our beautiful, beautiful, amazing community of astrologers and astrology students, astrology lovers. Astrology is such a beautiful science. UAC is making that space available for people to come together and feel that power of being together.
Right, and you're going to find people who live in places, whether it's in the United States or internationally, where they don't get to speak their language out loud.
Exactly.
And they get to come to an environment where they get to share a language. Exactly. You know, we're going to have a ton. I can't even put a number on it. So many different dialects of astrology are spoken, right?
Common language.
We all have a sense that when we say the word Saturn, even though we might have some variations on that, we all have a common position that we can come back to. So that language that is spoken, I think, is powerful. It particularly for people who are sitting in places and living in places where they feel isolated in their art and language. And so when they come to a conference, the value of being able to just speak your language
to so many people and they understand.
Yeah, it means something. It means more than just, again, going to a class and listening to a lecture.
That's what a lot of people are after when they come to conferences, is that sense of getting together with like-minded people in the same language and enjoying, and sponging that fresh air, of knowledge and your own kind of knowledge that you love. About the bigger picture in life, much bigger picture than our everyday life. Let's go back to your lectures. The karmic astrology, planets and aspects to the lunar nodes. I personally love the lunar nodes. I've discovered recently so much more than I knew in the past 20, 30 years of studying astrology. So I'm really, really, really passionate and psyched about lunar nodes. So can you give us a little teaser for that lecture?
Well, let me just say that karmic astrology is a real broad umbrella, right? There's many different genres and many different variations of karmic astrology, and I'm an evolutionary astrologer, and even under that umbrella, there are different permutations of evolutionary astrology. My evolutionary astrology foundation and background comes through Jeff Green's work, Pluto, the Evolutionary Journey of the Soul. And so Pluto and the nodes are foundational. They are the very foundation of all the work that we do. So that looking at where Pluto sits by house, where the nodes sit by sign and house, gives us a great deal of information about the soul and its work and where it's coming from. The polarity point of Pluto and the North Node also give us a great deal of information about why the soul has chosen this particular lifetime and what tasks and issues that soul has chosen to work on this time around. But when we're looking at the nodes, well, first of all, let me say that, you've got 12 possible placements of Pluto. So you take all of humanity and split it by 12 houses. It is hard to swallow. It's like splitting all of humanity, 7 billion people, by 12 sun signs. Granted, every Leo is going to have something in common, but not everything, right? Because there's so much more to the chart than just the sun. And of course, the soul foundation in Pluto by house is just one piece of it. The nodal placement is the rest of the picture. The sign and it's not the rest of the picture, it's the next big piece. So you're looking at the sign of the nodes, the house of the nodes, the planet that rules the sign of the south node. So let's say you have your south node in Virgo. The planet that rules your south node is going to be Mercury. Where Mercury sits in the chart by house and sign gives us more information. Your north node then would be in Pisces because they're exactly 180 degrees from one another. That would be ruled by, for some people, it would be ruled by Jupiter. That's the traditional ruler. In evolutionary astrology, we'd be looking to Neptune as the modern ruler of the North Node. So those are pieces in place. And when you're looking at the nodes, then we want to start assessing what are the contacts to the nodes. So Pluto by house, you've got the South Node by sign, house. It's planetary ruler by sign and house and sign. And then we're going to look at, are there any planets conjunct the south node? Any planets conjunct the north node? Any planets square the nodes? In classic astrology, a planet square the nodes is called at its bendings. So nodes are exactly 180 degrees from one another. Exactly. To the minute, it's a partile opposition, no degree of separation from that exact aspect. So when a planet hits the bendings, in other words, it squares the node, one node, it automatically squares the other. If a planet is conjunct one of the nodes, then it is naturally, by default, going to be opposing the other node. If a planet is trine one node, that's 120 degrees. What's left, 120 degrees minus 180? You've got 60 degrees, that's a sextile. So if it's trining one, it's sextiling the other. If it's semi-squaring one, it's sesquiquadrating the other. So any of those combinations, if it's in conjunct or quincunx one, it's semi-sextile the other. Now, for some of you listening, that's going to go right over your head, and that's okay. And in my lecture, we're not even going to talk about that kind of detail. What we're going to talk about, what I'm going to talk about, and hopefully get you engaged in the conversation with me, is what does it mean to have a planet on the south node? And so we're going to talk about what that means. And there are 3 conditions when a planet is on the south node. And I'll give you a taste of that. Condition number 1 means that it's, which is very rare, that it's total fruition, meaning that the soul did everything it was supposed to do and is now plucking the fruit from the tree of its hard work. Condition number 2, also kind of rare, which is total relive, meaning that for whatever reason, this isn't a judgment, isn't because you did something wrong or the soul did something wrong, for whatever reason, circumstance or whatever, the soul was unable to accomplish anything and is back to reinvest itself and to relive the dynamic again so it can figure it out. Condition number 3 is the most common, and that one is a combination of 1 and 2, and I will detail how you figure out, because there's a clear and concrete methodology for figuring out, is it option 1, complete fruition, option number 2, complete relive, or option number 3, a combination. And so I will show everyone who chooses to attend my lecture how to determine that and what it means if, in terms of, so you land in total relive. What does that mean? Is that bad? Is that good? What does it mean? Is it total fruition? Do you win the gold star from God? Does that mean, what does that mean? None of those things necessarily, but I will talk to you about that. We'll talk about what does it mean to have a planet on the north node. And then my favorite of all is planets square the nodes and what those mean.
Wow.
And so we'll talk about how planets square the nodes represent skip steps. And again, this isn't a good thing or a bad thing or a right thing or a wrong thing. It's just a matter of what does that mean and how can we apply it in this lifetime. For me, looking at evolutionary astrology and karmic astrology isn't about looking to the past per se. It's looking to draw some energy and information from the past so that I know where I'm going in this lifetime. How do I accomplish what I need to accomplish more cleanly and clearly? I prefer the being a Sun in Capricorn, Mercury in Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn. I love efficiency. And so for me, I prefer the most efficient method for getting from point A to B with the least amount of trauma and drama to get me there. And I find that evolutionary astrology is that for me. The past becomes clues and indicators about where I'm going and why I might keep stumbling over the same pattern again and again, and gives me some understanding and in a way that I can hopefully move through it more effectively.
Interesting. While I'm listening to you, I'm thinking this is such an important topic because the karma, the nodes, as from where I'm standing, from where I'm looking at it, presents a much bigger picture than just our little, everyday life and, love matters and money matters and political matters. The biggest picture for us as individuals is why is the meaning of our life. Why we're here on Earth? What are we doing? And so the lunar nodes, the way you present it with your topic, actually should show us the meaning of life. It's like the biggest question. I think it's like one of the most important lectures that people should go to.
People want meaning. And in the absence of a clear sense of meaning, we will make it up. In the absence of anything, we make up, because we want to have meaning. We want to have context to our lives. And so I find evolutionary astrology. Now, I don't know whether past lives are true or not, and I'm not overly interested in specific past lives. If they happen to, if somebody happens to ask me about a past life and I can see where it shows up in the chart, if they said, this is what I had a dream about, or somebody once told me I had a past life like this, I might look at the chart and say, yeah, I could see that as true. But for me, I'm more interested in what is that telling me about the here and now and where this individual is going in this lifetime. We are the current manifestation of the soul, and as such, tasked with doing the work of the soul. And in doing that, we better our lives. That's my story. That's my theory. That's how I work. And that's what I teach.
I agree with you. And from scientific standpoint, it all lines up with what you just said. And whenever I get a chance, I'll explain that in the future. But yes, back to your important topic. This is fascinating. And I think even from the perspective of improving our functioning in our day-to-day life, with work, with our love matters, with money matters, from what I understand, if we align with our greatest mission, and our greatest mission will be shown in the North Node, things just line up in our life.
They do. They line up certainly better, for sure.
It's just when you know where you're going as a big picture.
And I think it's also super important, Nadia, too, and I will say this in my lecture and point this out. This isn't a matter of either or, South Node versus North Node. The nodes are at 180 degrees. The aspect that is correlated to 180 degrees is an opposition. The sign that correlates to 180 degrees is Libra. Libra is about the marriage of two individuals to create something together. So this is the harmonizing, that's a good Libra component. Also, oppositions are about awareness. So we're attracting experiences to become aware of that which we are not aware of, to integrate that, to harmonize those two pieces together. That leaving behind the South Node will not help us gain the North Node. We must use the North Node and our lessons and our growth process through the North Node to elevate the patterns of the South Node so that they work hand in hand, so they work together, which is what a good relationship should do.
Exactly. And sometimes in a very Capricornian way, as I'm a rising Capricorn, I think of the nodes is that the South Nodes is our equity.
I like that.
And the North Node is what we do with our equity, and we
very good.
Our passive income.
Nicely. I like it. I have a lot of Capricorn and a lot of Earth. Trust me. The concept of equity and capital are all good. I like it.
All right, let's move on to your next topic, which I think is very much beginner friendly. It's from the track Fundamentals and Essentials of Astrology. It's a beautiful topic. It's marked in red, and it's about Mars. Mars, the path of actualizing our personal power. I love that.
I changed the title of this and reworked how I've done this lecture in the past. I think the last time I did a Mars lecture, I did it at the Great Lakes Astrology Conference, and that was in I think it was last year, maybe. But I had been focusing on Mars as dealing with, looking at Mars as anger. And which it is. I mean, I'm not here to change my whole point of view on that. But instead, I was overly focused on Mars as the concept of our personal weapons in life. So people with Mars and Geminis, their weapon of choice is going to be their words and their intellect, right? So and I'm not gonna go into all of that right now. But I started thinking about how do I shift from to a more an empowering process, because the very nature of the lecture itself was about how to functionally use Mars, how to use that energy to move ourselves forward. I really want to focus on the empowerment process of Mars. But I think that as I'm thinking of it, I will also have to touch on how do we disempower ourselves? Because the sense of helplessness that we, by and large, I think humans feel. The study of astrology is one way to try to feel in control and feel more powerful in our lives by trying to figure out what's going on, because we are often helpless. I'm going to talk about the places we give up power and the places we have our power, how to effectively use the power we have, and how that drives the choices that we make. I'm going to talk about where we give our power away. Again, how we lose power, how we foster or enable, not foster, foster to me is a positive word. How do we enable that feeling of impotence, which then leads to lashing out? To me, anger is the byproduct of helplessness. It's the byproduct of a fear-based Mars that doesn't know how to act and feel powerful, so it lashes out in an attempt to feel power. And in an adrenaline rush, it feels that power in that moment, but like adrenaline, it's gone. And what is left is a lingering sense of helplessness. So I really want to get to, in that lecture, in this lecture coming up, I really want to get to a place where people feel like, not only can I look at my own chart and say, this is how I empower myself, and this is how the view I'm going to take on this, but then how can I empower other people? And that really is about helping them shift their narrative and helping them shift their story about their Mars. And so we often in our disempowered place try to grab power. The Mars in Gemini is my example, will try to grab its power through its wit and intellect. And so it uses its sword to strike out with its words and gets a rush of adrenaline. But in the end, an overdose of adrenaline, or what adrenaline does to us physically, can make us ill. We get an ill feeling from it when we come down off adrenaline. So we can either become an adrenaline junkie with our anger, an anger junkie who has to keep perpetuating a misuse of power in order to feel that sense of power, versus really digging down to the root of it. What is it that I desire? Because Mars is the function of desire. How do we meet our desires instead of giving that power away to something external to us? That makes sense?
Makes sense. And now that I'm thinking, I would rename this lecture an anger management for astrologers.
That was kind of the way I looked at it before, and certainly I will be talking about that. But my intention is to not focus. I think the last time I did it, it was more humorous. It turned into a more humorous lecture that people were able to laugh at their weapons that they use. And that's not where I want to go. As funny as that is, and I can make people laugh with astrology. And humor is funny because it's true.
Yes.
And we're often laughing because it's an uncomfortable truth that we see in ourselves. But that's not where I want to go. I do want to address the empowerment piece, which is about how to effectively go forward in life without using anger as the tool to propel us there. I actually don't believe in the concept of healthy anger.
Came up with the new name, Beyond the Anger Management.
There you go. It's beyond anger. It's true. It's true.
Beyond the Anger Management for astrologers. Mars is amazing, and I just did recently a video with Adam Ginsburg about Mars and Venus and the distance of Mars from Earth, the proximity, his sky factors. It just hit me that what he was saying, the further the Mars is, the more it becomes the outer planet, the closer it is, the more powerful it is in your face. He was talking about it. And it's interesting how when it goes further, so when Mars conjuncts the Sun, its power becomes more of an outer planet power, meaning the anger is already managed. It's a powerful in your soul type of Mars, that higher level sort of, which is very interesting. And coincidentally, you wearing a red sweater. That's very, very martial video of you. I don't know if it's a coincidence or you're psychic or something.
No, I am a Leo rising. I have a South Node in Aries.
Makes sense.
And being all the earth that I have in my chart for many years out of my life, I stayed away from bright colors. And the more I have in my life, past my first Saturn return, and I'm now about into my second Saturn return, now that the more I've integrated that fire quality into my life and felt more comfortable on stage and in front of people, and I've done television and radio and broadcasting, the more I was able to own color and be able to wear red.
I totally get what you mean. I've gone through the same process with my rising Capricorn, wearing all black.
Yep, absolutely. The ruler of my ascendant is the Sun in Capricorn in the 6th for me, and that's, you know, my natural inclination is to wear black. So I force myself to buy color. And it looks good. I think it looks good with my dark hair and all. But it is a natural inclination to go toward black and dark colors.
You're both lectures. I could see that. First I thought they're more geared towards beginners, but now that I'm hearing how deep you go with them, I think I would qualify them as all levels.
Yeah, I think the node one is not a truly beginner one, because I'm not going to explain what an aspect is. I'm not gonna, so if somebody doesn't know what a square really means, or what I'm talking about applying and separating aspects and that sort of thing, that's why it's not beginner, right?
Okay, so intermediate, advanced.
Yeah, interpretation, right? So that's why Mars to me is more beginner, because I'm not, it's all, there's nothing about how to blend it with another planet. We're not going to be looking at, you know, we're really just going to be talking about my vision of Mars, and then I'm going to talk about Mars through the signs as much as I can. Sometimes I can get them all, and sometimes I can't. I used to feel that I had to get them all, and now sometimes I just do random. I let people shout out, "Where's your Mars?" And we'll just get as many as we can in as possible. So I haven't decided, just depends on how far I go along the first part of talking about Mars.
I love that. So if you are beginners and you're looking to come to Laura's lecture about Mars, I encourage you to print out your chart and know where your Mars is, so you can shout out loud, "Mars is in Aries. Laura, tell me what that means." And the louder you yell, the better chance she's going to answer your question. So use your martial power. Mars and Aries, or Pisces probably not going to yell. But
you know, we're going to talk about the power of, you know, I think that for me, I have Mars in a naturally feminine yin sign. I have Mars in Taurus. I have seen friends, I have plenty of friends who have Mars in water signs, who are not shrinking violets by any stretch of the imagination. So it just depends on the karma of it all, I suppose. And that's why, unfortunately, it's not an intermediate class. Not going to be talking about the aspects to Mars and, you know, that sort of thing, which will give a deeper sense of the karmic viewpoint of Mars. And so on. So, but even in the narrative of looking at it by sign, I will be talking about some of the karmic and possible karmic implications of just looking at it by that sign. And so it'll still be very beginner. So those of you who are listening, who are looking for some beginner work, the beginner track is all for you.
Excellent. So beginners, put this lecture on your calendar, on your app, must-see lecture about Mars. So wonderful. Laura, thank you so much for the interview, very passionate. I love that. I hope people appreciate all that passion.
I hope so too.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person and shake your hand at the UAC. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Nadia. I appreciate it.